make an entrance, didn't you?
And welcome to the meeting, Councillor Bateman and everyone else. Thank you for being with us on our special council meeting. As we begin, I just want to go over a couple of housekeeping pieces here for everyone. Councillor Logans is joining us virtually today, so you'll be able to see her on the screen there. And Councillor Logans, I will make a point of trying to go to you to speak first so I don't forget. And then if you drop audio or anything like that, who's the best person for her to message? Because I don't see those messages when they come through. Just email Michael over in IT if something happens tech-wise. Councillor Logans is here with us until 7 o'clock, and then we're going to take a short health break, and then Councillor St. Pierre is going to join us virtually at 7. We can only have at this moment, one councillor attend virtually because we're waiting to adopt our new council procedural bylaw, which we couldn't adopt while the ministerial order M192 was in place. So there's just a process that we have to go through. And Councillor St. Pierre is off due to illness, so it's for all of us that he isolates at home. Councillor McMath is on her way, so she will join us as soon as she gets here. And then for other housekeeping in regards to public health orders, they have deemed that where council and staff are sitting are considered workplaces, so we don't need to wear masks while seated. However, members of the public who come and go do need to wear masks as you come and go. We're essential service, so no vaccine passport requirements, and we do not have a vaccine mandate in place. So that's just those pieces. If you do need a washroom, they're down the hall that way. And of course, you know where the exit are. So that's the housekeeping pieces. Thank you. And I do wish to begin also that we are meeting virtually, or actually in person and virtually, on the lands of the territory of the T'Sou-ke and Sianew Nations, and gratitude to be here today. Okay, so thank you everyone, and on that I'm going to look for approval of our agenda. It's item 3, and that is that the agenda for the November 23rd special meeting of council be adopted as circulated. Moved by Councillor Beddoes, seconded by Councillor Bateman. Anything on the agenda, Councillor Logans? Nope, all is good there. And then the intent of tonight's special council meeting was to replace the meeting that we did have scheduled last Monday, but the storm kind of came in and we had other priorities that needed to be taken care of that night. Okay, so I'll call the question on adoption, please. All those in favor? And that's unanimous. So we are right into public question and comment period. We have just basically our financial plan on the budget for tonight. We have one email correspondence received from Kent on this matter. So now I'll turn over to members of the public. This is your only time to speak to this item on the agenda, as we are sitting in a special council meeting. So if you do wish to address council, if you could please come forward. We just require your full name, the municipality that you reside in, and then we have 2 minutes allocated per speaker tonight. So I'll turn it over to you, to whoever would like to go first, and please just turn on the microphones so we can all hear you. It's up to you.
Yes.
Thank you. My name is Anna Russell. I'm from Juan de Fuca, but T'Sou-ke is my town. I only have one thing that I want to say tonight, and I wish I knew how you were voting because I could possibly spare you a 2-minute speech. But the thing I want to say is that there is no later time to start climate action. You have had some very important conversations over the past couple of years, and you have made some very important decisions this year and the one before, and now is the time to implement climate action. You know better than I do the consequences of the 3 states of emergency that were declared in BC this year. The climate doesn't get better from now. It gets worse until 2070, which is when India thinks that they can reach net zero emissions. Our only hope is that if we act now, our great-grandchildren might experience a better climate, because our children and our grandchildren will not. And the climate is not the only thing that is going to get worse between now and 2070. The other thing that will get worse is our ability to govern. As we lurch from crisis to crisis, we are going to start finding out that we are lacking the resources we need, the time we need, and the opportunity that we need to take longer-term actions like climate change mitigation, because we'll be focused on immediate crises. This council and the one immediately following you are the ones that are going to be able to make a difference for T'Sou-ke's emission reductions. Nobody else will be able to. There is strong support for climate action that has come through all of your public consultations, and I have great respect for all of you sitting on council and for the staff that support you. And so with all of that respect, I say to you tonight that let other levels of government do what they may or may not. But governing T'Sou-ke tonight, there is only you. And for climate action, there might be only now. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Russell. Other speakers tonight?
I just will have my 2 minutes. I won't be as eloquent as that.
The mic is on.
Oh, don't. William Wallace from T'Sou-ke. As I said, it won't be as eloquent as that. In your budget proposals, you have the $228,000 that was listed originally suggested by the Climate Action Committee. I hope you reconsider your consideration of having that amount and not hiring a full-time climate coordinator. I understand that you've hired an intern that seems to have great qualifications. Whether she's up to the job or not, time will tell. But given your budget projection of 17% increase, the 2% was for climate. Total department costs were 8%. Staff increases were 4.5%. Capital projects were 5.71%. The 2% was really very little to ask of a community that's in an emergency, climate emergency. I believe that we've demonstrated over the last year the need for action in climate change, and I believe we need a full-time coordinator to work with the CRD as they have indicated their commitment to climate action by last night by the presentation by the CRD. I think you really need a full-time climate coordinator to work with them to make an impact on our emissions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Wallace. Other speakers tonight? It's our only time in the budget. Only time. Just want to check. Last call? Okay. I think we're good. Thank you, Ms. Gray. Oops. Okay. Okay, well, thank you very much for those comments today. So we'll head right into item 5, and I'll turn this over to staff now to take us through the report, please.
Thank you, Your Worship and Council, and appreciate your flexibility at coming to this spontaneous council meeting, budget meeting, super important, so I really appreciate council taking the time out to come on a Tuesday evening to discuss the important District of T'Sou-ke budget. So I just have a high-level PowerPoint prepared. I was just going to talk about a few things, kind of how we got to where we're at today. And then department directors are here and able to answer questions regarding to specific department requests, capital projects. Mr. Carter is definitely keen to talk about those. So I'm happy to turn it over to questions after I'm finished my presentation. Oh, sorry, I'll stop that. Okay. So for the 2022 budget, the goals of the budget were to achieve council's strategic plan goals, incorporating citizen budget results, department requests, and service level reviews. And I just wanted to give a special shout out to Jennifer Royer-Collard and Christina Moog for a lot of support throughout the summer with organizing the community pop-up events and all of the herding of the cats that occurred with the budget engagement we tried to do during these COVID times. And I definitely would like to send my appreciation to staff for all their time and patience as we develop this financial plan that is presented in front of you today. And as I stated, I'm going to be running through most of the sections of this agenda, but that the department directors are here and ready to answer any questions you may have. The 2021 Q3 budget to actuals and forecast was presented to council at the October 18th COW meeting, and it indicated that the district does not anticipate any material overages in the operating budgets, and that is still true a month later here. As I said earlier, in earlier reports, the next 5 years of the District of T'Sou-ke financial plan are very important to fund numerous very expensive initiatives recommended in the Transportation and Parks and Trails Master Plan. We're looking at multiple avenues in order to fund these projects versus, DCCs, which council has seen numerous reports on, amending our DCC bylaw to collect the necessary revenue from developers so they can contribute to these projects, as well as we're looking at reserve funds and grants, of course, is our best friend right now. So we're looking at any possible funding sources to fund these projects to reduce the tax impact of these. And so even though 2021 has been another difficult year, I believe staff have done everything in their power to provide the services that the community needs and are continuously looking for ways to find efficiencies, maximize operational capacity, and do so in a fiscally responsible manner. The theme that finance has adopted for this year's budget is patience, and that's because T'Sou-ke's been growing rapidly, as I've stated last year, and will continue to grow rapidly. And while this has presented some challenges, I believe council supported spending in the right areas, such as the transportation plan, the Parks and Trails master plans, the OCP. These are crucial documents in providing guidance and direction to staff on priorities for the upcoming years. And one piece that I'm really excited about that's in the budget this year would be the asset management plan. We've recently submitted a grant application for this project, and once this report is complete, it will provide valuable information to the district that can be used in long-term planning for our asset replacements and reserve fund contributions. Having these reports ensures council will be able to make informed budget decisions on future growth and improvements in the community for years to come. And so I just wanted to highlight briefly too, when developing this agenda or budget, we focused again on achieving strategic plan goals, incorporating the budget feedback, department requests, and service level review. Carolyn, it's not going. Thank you. I believe council's seen this little slide a few times now, so this is just kind of where we started. We started the budget consultation beginning in June with informal polling questions and pop-ups, and right now we are in step 4 of this plan and are pleased to present the first draft of the budget to council. Based on the feedback from this meeting, staff will take this back if necessary and make any revisions, and ultimately with the goal of having the budget adopted either at the last meeting in December here or hopefully in early January. A big important piece of our engagement, again, was the citizen budget survey and mail-out, and detailed information has been provided to council at previous meetings on the results of these surveys, and staff have definitely incorporated the feedback received in that in some of the recommendations seen before you. I briefly wanted to just touch on the 5 categories of funding sources for the district for 2022. There's property taxes, which is what we're basically talking about today with the 6.09% increase. As well, the district collects sewer taxes and fees, which has increased slightly over 2021 just due to projected growth. Fees and charges as well are collected by the district as an additional revenue source, and there's increase in 2022 for increased building permit revenue, investment income, and as well there's been an adjustment to the community building fund contribution just to match the actual agreement for the last 2 years. The other source of funding would be grants, borrowing, and other. And there's a decrease over last year, and that's just due to last year we got the $2.9 million COVID increase. So that's it shows like a negative number, but it was a one-time COVID increase we received from the government. So that's why that number is decreasing in 2022. And in 2022 as well, there is increase in transfers from reserves, and that's just due to the volume of capital projects we are trying to accomplish in 2022. Switching gears to the expense side, there is a reduction in the debt servicing costs, and that's due to the Lot A debt being paid off in 2022. There's an increase in capital expenditures, and that's just due to the capital projects that are included in the 2022 capital plan. The reduction in transfers to reserves is again compared to 2021 is due to the COVID reserve fund transfer. And the increase in other municipal costs is where all of the department and asks are grouped in together. So that number is showing as increasing over next year. I won't go into tons of detail on this slide. I presented it a couple meetings ago, but these are just all the various different revenue sources that the district can collect funds from. Happy to answer any questions about this if council has that, but those are just all the various sources of funding that we have. And I just wanted to highlight, again, I showed this slide a couple meetings ago, but just wanted to update it with the 2022 numbers. So in the current budget in front of you, 4% of this annual budget, over $361,000 is allocated towards community support projects. This would be Celebrate T'Sou-ke, Communities in Bloom, sorry, not Celebrate T'Sou-ke, the Communities in Bloom, community grant programs, line items, service agreements. And on top of that, as I mentioned before, per our annual report, there was over $300,000 worth of permissive tax exemptions granted to the community groups. And as well, included in this year's budget is $60,000 of council contingency. I briefly wanted to touch on what is being funded with the COVID-19 Safe Restart Grant this year. So as agreed by council in 2021's budget, the Chamber of Commerce Service Agreement was funded for 2 years with COVID relief money. So this would be the second year of this funding. And then if council supports a contract renewal with them, that will be presented to council in next fall with consideration when all the service agreements, well, most of the service agreements are set to expire. There is community economic development. Again, this is a carryover from 2021, so it's just seeking council support to maintain the funding for the community active staffing position and operating budget. So that is being requested to be still remaining in the budget. Again, we have computer hardware and computer hardware and IT upgrades for $35,000. We have a partial funding of $44,000 being used of COVID money for the RCMP officer, as well the additional increase on top of that is being funded with the future police reserve fund. So there is a zero net tax impact for the RCMP increase in 2022, the way this is currently presented. There is a small increase of, one-time increase of $5,400 for the visitor center, which requested a one-time lift due to their increased COVID costs. The big inclusion in this year's budget would be $500,000 for the building repairs, which is needed to safely reopen Municipal Hall. This is being focused down on the second floor here to provide much more WCB compliant workspace for the department to live in and work in down there. So that is being requested by staff, as that's an eligible use of the funds, is to provide for facility reopening costs. The other two pieces in here would be the $30,000 council supported as a 2-year service agreement for T'Sou-ke Family Resource, and $11,000 has been reallocated from property taxes to being funded with COVID funds for the voter view software. Ms. Machada can speak more to that if you want more info after I'm finished here. That's just in regards to the election. So I just wanted to now kind of highlight some budget changes here, and then basically I can stop at this stage, and department directors will be here to kind of deep dive into whichever area council would like to talk about first. So as far as staffing goes, again, we're proposing, there's a new proposal compared to the proposal council saw a couple meetings ago of potential positions to be funded with COVID, or sorry, with the non-market change funding. And so after staff have talked and strategized, the positions we're asking for this year, which are prorated to start in March of 2022, would be a manager of engineering, a firefighter, and then to increase the budget for parks auxiliary workers. And this, basically the budget for non-market change is $270,000, and the total of those three funding asks would be $268,000. So there is at the couple of the earlier meetings, council resolved to include some outside agency asks in the budget. And those would be for the visitor center, the healthy schools, $5,000, T'Sou-ke Family Resource, again, that's funded with COVID. And, but just wanted to highlight that that would be a property tax increase in 2024 and beyond, if council still supported that agreement. And department requests. So as far as department requests go, I've just, all the details are included in the report with the attached spreadsheet there. So I was just going to do a high-level summary for council. There's new line items requested by council that totaled $5.7 thousand, or a 0.06% property tax increase, and those would be the line items for the Film Commission, Need to Suicide Prevention, and IACDI. As well, there you'll see there's a request or a proposal for council to reduce the travel budget, council contingency, and the T'Sou-ke Canada Day budget. The T'Sou-ke Canada Day was a one-time lift originally, and then that kind of got permanently absorbed in the budget with everything going on with COVID. So staff are suggesting that could maybe come back out of the budget and be considered with future councils if there's another way you wanted to fund an additional money for Canada Day. So that would be outside agencies and council. Oops, sorry, too far. So for CAO, included in the CAO's budget is the climate action ask, which is a 1.18% increase. I appreciate it's not everything that the Climate Action Committee is originally asking for, but attached to the report is a listing of what has been included in that request. And that would include the intern position, because there's a district portion of funding for that, as well as starting late August, a full-time climate action leader, project management. There's money for grant writing, story coaching consultant, the kickoff campaign, modal shift rebates, telework rebate, and that is what has been included in the proposal in front of you today for the climate action. As well, in reviewing budget to actuals, staff are suggesting reducing the legal budget by just over $17,000, just again based on actual costs. For corporate services, they have a total lift of $42.5 thousand, or 0.49%. You know, for that number, out of that number, $27,000 is just strictly for the election. That's a once every 4-year cost that is added. So you take that out of the mix, and their ask is obviously significantly reduced there to $17,000. There are 2 increases requested for finance and IT, and again, this is just due to reflect the actual costs for insurance and copy and service charges that the district is seeing here. I gotta put this down. Special shout out to the planning department, who has provided, what is the total here? Provided 1.58% in property tax savings, or savings anyways, in their overall budget due to the reduction of a one-time lift last year for a consultant they had while we were in between staffing for a couple of positions. So there was a one-time lift approved for council to fund a contractor to get us over the hump until permanent staff could start. And as well, there was already a budgeted increase or decrease in the OCP budget, as is anticipated in 2022. The OCP budget will be, project will be wrapped up. And so that would be from the planning department. In the engineering department, they have a total ask for the operation side of $19,000, or 0.2%. And again, the details are in the attachment there. The largest increase in there would be the highway maintenance increase of just under $36,000. And that would be, again, just due to actual costs of what it's costing to maintain the roads in T'Sou-ke. And for the fire department, again, the details are in the list there. The total of their asks is $75,000, or approximately 0.81%. The total of all of these asks is just under $139,000, or 1.12%. As stated by earlier, the original ask was $800,000, so I would hope council would agree. The staff's done, has been really brutal in reviewing this and being trying to be more realistic of what can actually be accomplished next year and coming up with a number that's a little more reasonable. And then there is, of course, an additional increase just for current and existing staff, and that's just due to annual increases in certain contracts we have. Another thing I failed to mention, I think, in prior meetings is the employer health tax. We didn't used to have to pay this, and, you know, for District of T'Sou-ke, we only would pay for the MSP premiums if staff wanted us to. You know, for example, my husband and I, like, he was covered under his plan, so I didn't get T'Sou-ke to pay for my medical premiums. It was covered under my husband's. So, you know, for the District of T'Sou-ke, last year, it was a $70,000 expense increase over what we normally were paying on average for MSP. So that number will only grow as salaries grow because the calculation is now based on the dollars of salaries, not just employees participating in the MSP plan. So yeah, with the change on how the government has done this plan, it's definitely a hit to every employer in BC because now they will definitely have a cost, whereas before it wasn't a guarantee staff would, or the district would have these costs. So I just wanted to highlight that's definitely a piece of the budget that's factored in every year and it's going up every year. So it's just another hit that we have to absorb. I briefly talked about, so there's been a $184,000 increase in revenue over last year, and that's made up of a $150,000 increase in building permit revenue. Just based on what we're seeing, we're trying to take out of consideration, yes, we have an increase in revenue for this year, but that's due to 2 BC housing projects that are currently ongoing that have created a significant portion of building permit revenue. And, you know, those projects will not be happening next year, so just trying to be conservative, we've budgeted a $150,000 increase in that revenue, and as well a $34,000 increase in investment income. And again, as I think I'd said before, right now we have a lot of money in the bank, but as we're starting to spend more money and do more of these capital projects, that funding will not be available and won't be collecting interest that's been invested with MFA right now. And I believe I had stated earlier, all of our investments are with MFA in the fossil fuel free fund right now, and we were waiting for the asset management plan to come and then provide council later next year with some recommendations on how potentially any changes to investments. But currently it's all at MFA in a fossil fuel free fund. And then I'll just end on the last piece that Mr. Carter is very passionate about is the capital projects. So there is over almost $7 million of capital projects proposed in the 2022 capital plan here. Out of that, we've been able to fund a significant portion of them with the existing reserve funds we had. But unfortunately, there's not enough reserve funds left because it's always a balancing act between what we need in the current year versus you need some funds available for future years. So in order to kind of try and balance this out, there's a shortfall of $276,000 to make this plan work as presented to council. So the proposal is to fund the Church Road Roundabout project with if it's funded with a 3% increase, which is $276,000. Staff would be recommending to transfer that fund those funds in 2023 into a reserve fund. You'll see that in the back of the financial plan in the reserve section, because then that funding become available for future roads projects that the district will undertake. And if you notice in 2025 and 2026, there was a reduction coming out of that plan, and that's because in 2024, there's a $15 million road borrowing project potentially. And so then there's a district portion, that's partially a DCC project, but as well there's a district portion that has to be contributed to that. So this is an option to save for those potential costs down the road. And so when those debt payments come due, then that's why then you start seeing that money coming out of this reserve fund. So when those payments are made, it won't be a tax hit in the out years. We'll hopefully have some funding available to fund those projects. I definitely can't sell the rest of the capital projects as well as Mr. Carter can. So I will just possibly stop there. And I just wanted to highlight too as well with all the plans that we're using to make recommendations to council, which is the official community plan, the strategic plan, and Transportation Parks and Trails Master Plan, and then coming in 2023 will be the Asset Management Plan. We definitely want to be incorporating in any budget ask going forward. Yeah, so I will probably just leave that there and turn it over to council for the first round of questions.
Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Gray. I'm going to go to Councillor Logan's first for questions. Can't hear you. Still not hearing?
Deja vu. Our system is not perfect, is it?
Not picking up any audio. Do you want to phone my phone?
Yesterday it worked when I turned it off and turned it on again.
Like when you turned your computer off and on?
No, I logged out and logged back in.
Okay, Councillor McMath said yesterday she logged out and then logged back in and it worked. Did you want to try that, Councillor Logans? Okay, and then when you come back, just speak out, okay? And then we'll go to Plan B. Got it, okay. I'll go to Councillor Bateman in the meantime. Perfect. Go ahead, Councillor Bateman.
Previous slide back up so we can sort of systematically, perhaps, go through these items. Okay, yeah, so my first question relates to those 3 positions added in 2022. Now, I note last year, or this year, the Parks laborers funding came out of the COVID relief fund.
Yeah.
And I think, so we're looking at $68,000 this year, coming out of non-market change. So I'm curious as to why.
Through your worship, and that's because COVID will not be around forever. So at some point, we need to absorb any of these funding or positions into the ongoing operating budget. So it's staff are recommending, like, at some point, we need to wean ourselves off the COVID funds, and there's already significant projects funded with that. So at this time, because it's a staffing and a necessary thing, staff are just trying to allocate a dedicated funding source to that will be available long-term. So that's
Right.
why it's not recommended for 2022 and beyond.
So potential wriggle room with that spot, maybe. I was curious about some other things. Oh, I just wanted to note that under outside agencies, we have need to suicide prevention. We've listed it at 3,500. What we did back in the spring, Councillor McMath very compassionately doubled their request, because traditionally they annually, given COVID and all the mental health issues, but traditionally they've asked for 1,700. So I think we could potentially line item fund them at that amount.
Sorry, what are they in there now?
They're coming in at 3,500, which
I
is what
see.
we gave.
Right,
this
for
year.
COVID, so
Yeah.
to scale it down.
But they typically 1,700, and they do request money from all CRD municipalities on a prorated basis, so.
Correct, yes, so that's just, through your worship, that's in there at 3,500. That was the council resolution passed at the October 18th meeting. There was a few resolutions council did pass before everything just kind of paused at that stage.
Yeah.
So that was one of the amounts that council supported at the time.
So subsequent to that, I've realized 1,700 is the usual amount that they request, and I think we could probably go to that amount. So I'll stop at that point.
Okay, thanks you, Councillor Bateman. Councillor Logans, are you back in again?
I'm back in. Can you hear me?
There you go. Okay, I can hear you,
Oh,
so
I can hear me.
please go ahead.
Thank you for your patience. Thank you, Ms. Gray, for your presentation. I love how passionate and intelligent you are with the finances. I have a couple of questions. The first question, through you, Chair Mayor Tait, would be about the voter view software. I'm not too familiar about it and just wanted some more details.
Okay, a little bit about voter view, please.
Through your worship, voter view is an electronic voting system. So rather than having the voters' books, we would have our voters list in a laptop. So what that will do is, A, reduce the touch in the voting stations. People won't need to actually sign the electronic book. And the other big thing that it's going to do for us that we were criticized for in the 2018 election is transparency. So between moving from the advanced voting to general day voting, the same electronic list will be used, so all people that voted at advanced voting will already be marked off the list, and that will just provide that extra sense of security that nobody can actually vote twice.
Perfect. Thank you, Ms. Machada. My next question is, actually, I'll sneak in a comment that I like the Roundabout, Church Road Roundabout project and hope that goes forward along with the road work. But my next question would be regarding the staffing positions, the manager of planning and economic development positions. There was a statement in the report about a review of job duties and how it would be included in the Parks Department, and then the role of the economic development position would be diversifying the tax base, of course. I'm just wondering if you can provide more information on that, and also what that position might look like, or what that, I guess, department might look like in the long term.
Thank you, Your Worship. So just a little bit of background. When we finally approved the community economic development position, there were a number of iterations, and the final iteration was to include elements of climate action within the community economic development function. It appears now that there's a request anyway, or a recommendation in front of Council this evening, that climate action has standalone dedicated funding. So taking that function out of community economic development, there was an opportunity for us to revision that work, and it really is long-term planning work. And in the short term, the long-term planning work that we're going to be concentrating on is the economic, or the employment land strategy that is in the OCP. And that piece of work certainly lends itself to planning and expertise in community planning. So that's the idea. There's just a change in our community ec dev function. If the dedicated funding for climate action stays, we thought we could find some economies of scale and efficiency marrying the community ec dev function with the manager of planning, where we really do need some more resources in planning just to keep up with the current things that we have with application processing, the policy work that we know is going to come on the heels of approving the official community plan, and then having project work like the employment land strategy that is so important for us going forward. We really need to have dedicated resources to try to ensure that our non-residential growth has a champion and keeps some pace with our residential growth. So, Councillor Logans, I hope that answers your question.
It really does. Thank you so much, Mr. McInnes. I think that's a fantastic plan. I like how that's evolved, and I hope that it goes along as requested. Thank you.
Anything else, Councillor Logans?
Not at this time.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Beddoes.
There you go. My screen just went black. Through your worship, to staff, this COVID reserve fund that we're using $780,000 for, I guess where, like the RCMP funding towards new officer, are we just bumping that down the line then? And you know, having to deal with it next year, and next year you're anticipating a 4.84% increase. Is this just a stopgap method, you know, of using some of that money?
To reduce the 2022 impact, yes, and that, but in the which will not be of the final number for 2023, but in the 4% increase in 2023, that 44,000 is included as a
Okay.
property tax funding in there, so that's included in that 4% number.
Okay, so you've taken into account that farther down the line that we got to pay the piper somewhere with the
Correct,
tax dollars,
yes.
okay? And the Chamber of Commerce and the T'Sou-ke Family Resource Society, are those ongoing, or is that, you refresh my memory here, I probably should know this, but I don't offhand. Are they just a one-time lift on this COVID reserve, or is that something that it worked in again with the next year's budget?
I'll answer that one. So T'Sou-ke Family Resource was meant to be 2 years, just
Okay.
given the crisis related to COVID, so that's where we felt it fit. It'll be up to a next council and maybe the situation at that day to determine if that will be extended and what that will look like. The Chamber of Commerce, though, I think was a shorter agreement so that it would tie into the other service agreements that are coming up. So I would imagine that they'll come forward with an ask
Okay, so-
again, and we would, the next council and working with staff would need to determine what the funding source will be.
So the next budget, that is not taken into account yet, because we don't know.
It is.
It is.
Yeah, sorry, just to
Okay,
clarify.
Just for the 1 year?
No, for the Chamber of Commerce?
Yes.
The Chamber of Commerce piece, if you look at the council page in the budget, it is included in all 5 years of the financial plan.
Okay.
Obviously, it's not guaranteed funding because all of the service agreements besides the T'Sou-ke Family Resource will be coming forward to council next year. So, but for the Chamber of Commerce for 2021 and 2022, there is no property tax hit for that, but in the 2023 to 2026 years, that is included in the percentages at the top of the page there.
That helps me a lot, thank you.
Okay, other councillors, Councillor Lajeunesse?
Yeah, the voter review software, I have a bit of an issue with, and that's just because we have an election once every 4 years unless we have a by-election. And I'm just wondering just how critical that is. Like, we have the ability to hold an election now without that. So why is that kind of top priority now?
For the two items that I mentioned, and the other one that I didn't mention is that it will actually allow us to process people through the voting stations quicker. I would say the main reason is for the purposes of transparency in being able to use one voters list system throughout all of our voting opportunities, where currently we have a separate set of books that we use for advanced because we're required to, and a separate set for the advanced voting. So what we were criticized for in the previous election is somebody came in to vote at the general election and said, I think they were signing on the same page as their dad, and he's like, but my dad already voted. But dad had voted at the advanced election, so he's like, well, my dad could come in today and get another ballot. We rely on the statement on the ballot, or when they're signing for their ballot, that they're swearing that they haven't already voted in the election, and it is an election offense to which they could ultimately serve jail time and have a huge fine. But just to ease everybody's mind, and for the other reasons that, we may still be dealing with COVID, that it's going to reduce the touch, and it's going to be able to facilitate us getting people through faster. But we are also able to use the COVID funds because of that.
Thanks.
Councillor McMath?
I have a follow-up question from Councillor Lajeunesse's line, through your worship to staff. How long does that software license stay with us for?
That $11,000 is just for 1 year. If we need to use it in a by-election, there would be a reduced cost, but it will only serve one election.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor, I just have a question I'm going to insert first, because I haven't asked anything yet. So one of them is on the community building fund that comes out federally, and it's usually allocated on a per capita basis. Do they adjust annually with population growth, or is it only when census data is available?
It is, there's a schedule, I'm just trying to find it, it's probably in my different pile. There is a schedule that is with I'm not sure if it's an actual agreement that was made, that lays out the funding to be received until the program ends. So it's just, there's a table for every municipality. I'm not quite sure the funding on it, but it doesn't get readjusted every year. It's the funding that's in that table that the district has received. We've been lucky, as everyone has, to receive double funding twice now on that fund. But the payments to the end of the term of that is laid out in the agreement.
Okay, so we've been receiving the same allocation then since that was signed. I think that was, I remember when that happened, and so it's just been the same amount.
It's been increasing slightly every year. I haven't done the actual calculations on how they've determined that. I don't know off the top of my head, but.
No, and that's fine. I remember elected officials, we were all rallying up that we at least need a CPI adjustment, so that's probably what that was.
Yes, it definitely has been slowly bumping up
Okay.
every year, and then it levels off for the last couple years, it looks like.
Okay, because then that agreement expires 2024, so I know that there is local government working groups sort of across the country looking at that now for the next time, as well as the local government finance documents policy paper put out by UBCM. The other question I had, so okay, that was fine, I just couldn't remember that. I should have written down, I'll come back to. I'll go to Councillor Bateman and it will reemerge. Thank you.
Sorry, one quick clarification there I just wanted to add is, you will notice though that I do have community building fund in the budget in all the out years, because similar to the CAREP funding, I'm assuming that there will be some program that will replace that will hopefully, at least at a minimum, provide the same funding level as the prior programs did. So in 25 and 26, I do have a potential deposit into the reserve fund.
Okay.
Again, presuming that this will have to be replaced with something, and hopefully the funding level should be at least the same, if not, hopefully more.
Well, hopefully more based on the growth that we've received since the program was initiated.
For sure.
But it is a bit concerning. My other question was on the e-com. Mr. McInnes and I were on a call today that I was getting a bit animated, I suppose would be a good word to use. We've been working on this file for a year now. This is a $250,000 hit to us? $300,000 hit to us that the province is wanting to download on local governments. For those in the audience, this is 911 dispatch. So why I'm so animated is because back in 2012, communities like T'Sou-ke, RCMP served, and many others entered into a long-term 25-year agreement for RCMP services. And everything was fine. So we know what that agreement is and so forth. Now, last year, someone looked at something and felt that 911 dispatch should be covered by local governments, but only the South Island. Not the North Island, not Central BC, not Northern BC, not anywhere else in BC, but just these South Island communities. And so it's hard to rally it at the CRD because those with their own established municipal forces have already been subscribing to that. If we were going to pay this type of amount, we usually go through a procurement process to get the best price, right? We didn't have that opportunity because it was all part of the RCMP agreement. So led by the mayor of Cowichan, we've been gathering together to try to come up with this, and then different administrators have come and gone over this past year, giving us different information. UBCM is involved to assist us with the information source. And at first I sort of heard that they were going to phase it in, and it's just all over the place. But basically where we're at now is that we have to be prepared to start paying this year in 2022. And it's sort of phasing in, so we're still pushing back because I really don't feel it's our bill to pay. And then we're rallying on all of that right now. So it's an expensive bill. It's one that I refuse to accept just like that. So it's ongoing. But again, that's fate and will be with us permanently. And yet it's another cost that it's just really hard to absorb that.
And just on that point, sorry, I just wanted to clarify, that is not included in this budget.
No. And I'm glad that it isn't.
Yeah, so if those costs do materialize, before 2022's budget, because they're initially suggesting prorating it over multiple years to get to the full $300,000. So 2022's impact would have been just under $80,000 to the budget because it started in April. So it'll be just under $80,000. So in theory, if that does get downloaded onto the district, that will have to be risk managed in 2022. It currently is not in this draft and not in the out years of that budget.
Yeah, and the other local governments are not putting it into their budget either, because if we did, it looked like we're just accepting this. So we'll deal with that down the road. I just wanted to share that that's out there. At the last meeting, Councillor Lajeunesse had asked about VIMQ, which is the Vancouver Island Major Crime Unit. So many years ago, there was a program established where local governments could contribute into sort of a pooled fund to help with major incidents of crime that may occur. So there's sort of criteria, and then there was a time where they were reviewing it and looking at ways to make the member municipalities to make it affordable, and then all of that sort of went out the window, and then it's sort of parked. Why it's important to us is because if we have a major incident in here, we have to pay for all of that. So there is sort of a concern as we grow and challenges grow, that all of our problems and everything grow with us, and we're on the hook for that cost. So the intent of VIMQ is that it's almost like an insurance policy. You pay into something so you can access the resource, but it's all bungled up right now. Sadly, we have had major incidents here, but in the case where the culprit is known, it helps because they know who it is. If there was a homicide, then it's full investigation. The whole team comes in, takes over the whole thing, and we basically pay for all of it. So it's a big concern as a growing community. So that's what that piece is. Over to Councillor Bateman.
Okay. So yeah, through you to our new chief and Captain Norris Jones, I note that your paid-on-call ask has dipped 25% from what we saw last month. How will that impact the program, or will it?
Through your worship to Councillor Bateman, this decrease here is reflective of we've lost a few more members over the past couple of weeks. The amount in 2022 still has full implementation of the paid-on-call program as previously described. What this amount equals to is the lower end of projections. So should there be some significant incidents that require paid-on-call staff time that's above what we anticipate or projections, and then we'd be pushing that budget and then having to manage it through to the end of the year. So there's not a lot of wiggle room in that budget to take any unforeseen major events in our community.
So on that note, to Ms. Gray, there is I see that the budgets all do, as the year progresses, take shifts and turns, and funds are shifted from here to there, and so as much as we lock this in this 5-year plan, it's a living document of kind.
Yeah, correct, but the only thing that can't change is the overall property tax amount. Once that has been set and the property tax rate bylaw has been passed, then that amount can't change. The allocations, as you've seen yesterday in the amended 2021 financial plan, though all of those adjustments are able to happen. And depending on the amount of the increase, if it's just a small overage, staff usually will just discuss internally what their budgets are at, and usually the planning department's coming in with some more building permit revenue or something, so that will help offset any overages that are smaller in nature, but anything in a larger scale definitely would be presented to council for recommendations or support on what staff are recommending to fund any of that.
Okay, thank you. I want to bring Mr. Carter into the conversation because this 5-year plan, I think there's over $21 million worth of transportation master plan implementation happening here. But let's focus on this Church Road Roundabout at the moment. So in your report, Ms. Gray, you state to keep budget below 4%, we'd need to reduce or eliminate budgets for, and this would allow us to proceed with that Church Road Roundabout, the 5-year road program, which is currently at $700,000. Actually, I'd much rather to hear your overview statement on the transportation master plan. And
thank you, Councillor Bateman. Through your worship to council, Budgets are a hard decision, difficult and one of the most critical decisions for council coming up. There's 4 pieces of information that I think will assist in decision-making process tonight and going forward. They will address Councillor Bateman's question in regards to the options for council tonight. In terms of capital projects, some of the big asks, as well as how we're strategically trying to position financial planning for the district to move forward with some of these critical TMP projects. So the first bit of information is for implementing these transportation master plan projects. They're by far the largest piece of advocacy and implementation of addressing climate action initiatives as well as environmental sustainability. We heard from the CRD last night where they were asked, how do you fix climate action? Well, you have to implement active transportation projects. When we engage these active transportation projects, we're providing a means of alternate transportation modes, taking cars off the road, providing safer public transportation, and ultimately reducing greenhouse gas emissions by facilitating faster and safer travel. In terms of environmental sustainability with implementing these, essentially, I would say 90% of the storm infrastructure in T'Sou-ke is failing or has failed. When we implement these critical corridor projects and the roundabout projects, not only are we addressing the road infrastructure, providing active transportation, we're replacing the storm infrastructure at the same time. So we're also addressing critical components of asset management at the same time as we're doing these projects. The second critical piece of information is to do with funding the roundabout project. So as council knows, we were successful this year in receiving a $500,000 grant for the church corridor project, as well as to go towards the church roundabout project. Why it's critical this project goes forward this year is because if it is deferred to a following year or to 2023, we are not eligible for these active transportation grants, which 2 of them come up typically on an annual or every 2-year basis with the Ministry of Transportation. If the project gets completed next year and another round of these come out, we'll be eligible for another $1 million in grants and 2 grant opportunities to go forward with these active transportation projects, which addresses, like I said, it hits climate action, active transportation, safety, and environmental sustainability. There's also opportunity with this roundabout project with development going on at Wadham's Farm right now. There's other financial benefits and savings in some of the work being conducted in unison with that development going forward and progressing this summer as well. So definitely cost savings realized there, plus impact to the residents that may be purchasing in there. If this project gets delayed, we're going to be opening up a roundabout project right in front of the primary access to that whole development. So very critical, I believe, for this roundabout project to go forward next year, or this year in 2022. Third piece I want to highlight is essentially with the 6.09% tax increase, that funds a portion of the capital project for church, a small portion of it, but it's the most strategic piece in financial planning for setting council up in the district for funding some of these corridor projects in the future. The money for the tax increase for that project is earmarked to go into a capital reserve going forward. If council today and council in the future supports an initiative like that another 1 or 2 times, we could establish a 6% tax increase over a few years that essentially will fund initial portions of these capital projects. But if that is established over a 2-3 year period, we'll have basically an annual amount of money coming in that's equivalent to $700,000 or $800,000. With that money, in conjunction with DCC revenue coming in, if we needed to implement some of the critical pieces that are the very expensive pieces in these TMP projects, such as the Throop Connector, Phillips Corridor, we'd be positioned to take out a loan, do that, and pay it back with the funds coming in. And the message to sort of taxpayers is, yes, we have to take out a loan, but will there be a tax increase? No, it's already been accounted for over the last few years from smart strategic financial planning. The 6.9% increase is the only option in front. Even though the 4% or under 4% speaks to it, that does not include putting this into a capital reserve in future years forward. The 6.09% does account for that. with the other options, so the 6.9 is the only one that will strategically position ourselves for financial sustainability to implement these projects going forward. With the alternate options and removing some of the large other items such as the patch and pave program, the West Coast Road active transportation design, and the annual paving program, I would not recommend that it is the best decision to do that. If we do not go forward with the paving program and address critical rural road areas such as Connie Road that is in horrible shape, we will be faced with the decision in following out years of double the cost to complete the same work, which will have tax increase implications going forward in the future as well. Right now, we were successful in a grant to implement an expansion to the wastewater treatment plant, which also has a large component on West Coast Road. This West Coast Road active transportation design that would be eliminated, that's budget to push that to a final design state. So when we're implementing this project in 2023, if grants were available or if the ministry wanted to step up and partner, which they have in these design projects, we could potentially have projects shelf ready to implement active transportation on West Coast Road as well, which will basically connect the town center to Whiff and Spit Road. Very critical projects. I can't stress enough how important the strategic financial planning is in getting these tax increases in place for future projects. Not going forward with the Roundabout project is there's going to be financial implications, and we're going to miss out on future grant opportunities. And ultimately, by going for that 6.09% increase is going to position us to go forward in the future, initiate these TMP projects, address climate action and environmental sustainability. Nothing further to add in that overview.
Could you go back to the 30-second mark? No, I'm kidding. Thank you, Mr. Carter. I just wanted to state that Councillor Logans have left the meeting now. It was 7. She didn't want to interrupt. And so we just need to queue up Councillor St. Pierre. So do you have a follow-up right now?
Yeah,
Yes, just while it's
think
fresh.
as we say, we're going to have to hear that again and perhaps read it in a report. So I guess we're coming back here to look at this budget again. Maybe on that night we will have what you've just said in writing.
We're doing potentially first, second, and third reading tonight. So
Is that how it usually works?
Yes.
It does.
That is
Okay.
what is in the report, and so, I mean, we can spend more time, but council is staff is looking for us to get this going so that they can hit the ground running in the new year. So this is sort of our opportunity.
Yeah.
On the other hand, it is all recorded on the webcast, so we can always catch that snippet and play it over and over again. Right, Mr. Carter?
It'd be nice to have a transcript.
So I would right now want to just take a short recess so we can get Councillor St. Pierre in the meeting. Okay? Okay. Testing. Testing 1, testing 2.
One of these days, these systems are going to work flawlessly.
Please hold a moment while we work out our technical challenges. I can hear him.
Can you hear me?
Okay, try again?
Can you hear me?
Yes, you'll need to speak up a little bit more, but it sounds like you can hear me.
Yes, I can.
Okay, yay, we're good. Okay, we have two-way communication, so we are going to resume the meeting now, and we're going to just go back to, we ended up with Mr. Carter giving his synopsis of the budget. Okay, so Councillor Bateman has the floor.
Yeah, so I was going to risk trying to summarize what you just said, so I won't because Councillor St. Pierre's joined us, so I'll ask you to repeat in a more abbreviated fashion. Excuse me?
Councillor St. Pierre was asked to follow on YouTube, so are you asking Mr. Carter to repeat all of that?
I don't want him to repeat the entire thing. I'd like him to repeat a Cole's Notes version that captures this. You're seeking us to go full Monty with the 6.09% increase to ensure that we have 3% tax go straight into a reserve fund, and you want to see this happen over multiple years, over at least 3 years, to ensure that we're completing projects and being ready for new grant streams as they come available. And what am I missing?
A lot.
So through your worship, to Councillor Bateman, so first item is completing the TMP projects, addressing public safety, environmental sustainability, as well as active transportation, and addressing climate action initiatives. You're providing multimodal transportation, you're taking the cars off the road, you're reducing travel times, you're checking all the boxes by doing the TMP projects. Going forward with the church roundabout project, why it's very critical to do it this year is because we're successful with $1 million in grants right now. Those programs come out every year or two. If we do not do it this year and that project is still pending, we will not be eligible for the next round of grants if they come out. The strategic financial component of it is essentially with the tax increase that is recommended at 6.09, it will fund a 3% portion of this project this year at $280,000, and then in outgoing years that goes into a reserve. Strategically, I'll bring forward for council's consideration to do that over the next couple of years, so we establish approximately 600,000 to 800,000 that is consistently always going into reserves in out years. Then if the decision comes forward to have to take out a loan in year 4 or 5, the money is there to pay that debt payment in conjunction with DCCs coming in, going out for sort of referendum or vote on a loan. There would be no implications because it would already be accounted for over a 3-year period of funding strategy this way. The last bit is by eliminating some of the other critical projects such as Connie Road, West Coast Active Transportation Design, and the Patch and Pave program basically means that we can do no paving repairs aside from a small pothole. There's no money to do it. If we do not engage in the active transportation design, which is going to be conducted in unison with the sewer force main project going in, it will allow us to have a project shelf ready for potential partnership with the ministry, advocacy funding contribution by them potentially if they want to partner with us, or having it shelf ready for a grant opportunity. By not going forward with an opportunity for Connie Road and some of the rural road paving this year, the cost could double by next year because there's opportunities right now that we're looking into in conjunction with highway projects. Those are the Coles notes essentially. Yeah, highly supportive of the 6.09% tax increase, financial strategy, and you're checking all the boxes: climate action, public safety, and environmental sustainability.
So as a slow learner, I'm getting it. However, I would assume at our open house in next month, right? There will be some displays and dedicated material on this the logic of what you're proposing tonight. Yeah. Okay.
Through your wish, I'll just briefly want to just address that. So right now, the as Mayor Tait stated, council staff is hoping for 3 readings of the financial plan bylaw, or 3 readings as amended potentially, based on council conversation today. Because in order to keep moving this bylaw forward, the next step would be open house, which exactly, I believe we're confirming location if it's going to be potentially in council chambers here. But similar to open houses over the prior years, every department will have a kiosk basically set up with tons of information about what's in their 2022 budget. Mr. Carter most likely will include things in the out years a little bit, just for a high-level summary so people can kind of follow the bouncing ball along. And as well, what staff are undertaking is similar to last year, because we couldn't do an in-person open house, we did a virtual online open house. So instead of doing a live one, because that wasn't really well attended, staff will be, depending on how today's meeting goes, we'll be working over the next week or so to prepare a video presentation and have that available on our YouTube channel as well, just for anyone who can attend the open house in person. So we're going to kind of tackle it 2 ways, of an online version as well as an in-person that will have tons of details and slides and more specifics about all of the specific projects included, if the public has any questions or doesn't have the information already provided throughout the year here. Sorry.
A 6.09% increase is equivalent to $100 a year and $8.33 a month as well.
I saw that in the report. What I regrettably did not see was the kind of explanation you've just given us, unless that is contained in the first paragraph on page 6, where we do discuss the Church Road Roundabout. So I guess, you've explained it well. Thank you. It's just, it's hard to make to vote in favor of an additional 3% without having sat, and it seems like something on the fly a little bit for me. And I know motions on the fly are to be avoided at all costs, because ideas are coming forward and we're all making decisions without due contemplation.
Yeah, but this isn't a motion on the fly, because it's in a published staff report that went live, I don't remember what day. So a motion on the fly would be me proposing, let's build a tower for 10, and put in a 10% tax increase with no background information on it. That's a weird example. I just can't think of one right now. I'm going to go to the next counselor, though.
Well, just to be clear, it
You didn't
is
call a
not
point
in
of
the
order.
report.
I know, but how we receive information is through the printed material, the staff presentations, feedback from the public, and the work we do out in the community. And so there's always, even when we receive development proposals, we get more from the PowerPoints that the staff put together when they come before us, as well as the printed reports that go live on a certain date. We always get 2 pieces of information. Next counselor, please. I'm going to go to Councillor St. Pierre, who's joined us online.
Thank you very much, Mayor Tait. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. If there's a way of turning up the volume in the room, that would be great.
I can't seem to do it from my end, sadly. I'd like to thank staff, first of all, because I'm incredibly impressed with the work that's been done here. I do think that no matter what, we're looking at a significant increase, and when I look at the difference between the 4 and 6%, and I look at the work that's going to be happening in terms of both mitigation and adaptation with the transportation work, because let's not make any mistakes here. As we've noticed in the last few days, we have a lot of water falling from the sky, and we really need to have the sewer infrastructure and the stormwater infrastructure to handle this sort of thing. Otherwise, things are only going to get worse. We have an opportunity right now, while resources are in place, staff is in place, expertise is in place, to actually avoid having waters essentially wipe out our infrastructure. The costs are much lower at this end. This is a stitch in time to prevent huge infrastructure costs down the line that we simply won't be able to afford at all. So I fully support any work that actually will keep our roads intact and prevent them from being washed out. And that looks like the 6% to me. The community also stepped forward very strongly in favor of the transportation work. So I think that it's a hard pill to swallow, but I don't know what else we can do here.
Thank you, Councillor St. Pierre. Other questions from Councillor Beddoes? You wanted to speak a second time. You wanted to go on, raise some matters. Go ahead. Yep.
Okay, I'm going to touch onto a thorny subject in a second, but I just wanted to say that I hope that our communication person captures what was said and make it into I thought it was an excellent report. I mean, I understood completely what you were getting at, what we have to do now in order to get everything moving. And the transportation, what I hear in the street is two things, climate change and the transportation, and they go hand in hand. And if we don't set up these things now, everybody's complaining about the traffic, will get worse. So I appreciate what you said. Now, the other one is last night, we had the Capital Region District Climate Action Committee come to us with a presentation, and an extremely good presentation. They've been doing a lot of great work along with our Climate Action Committee. In fact, they've almost been doing parallel work in a lot of cases. Now, the part that bothers me is that I've got this reduced ask. We went from 200 and something thousand down to just about 100. And I see a great deal of duplication here. You know, it was stressed last night that the CRD, and we endorsed that, by the way, and it in all likelihood would pass, and that they would be writing for grants. So it doesn't make any sense for us to be writing for grants, and they're writing for the same grants. So there need to be some coordination. They also have a concierge position or a coordinator with a staff. Now, it's a volunteer staff that will be liaisoning with all the 13 municipalities. And I just see everyone, I look down this list, grant writing, story coaching, concept, digital program, video storytelling, climate action guidebook, reporting template, tabloid newsletter. These things, I always thought that they might be better to be looked at to all the municipalities. We're all in the same problem, and it's a major problem. I understand that. But we've got to be careful about going off sort of everybody doing their same thing and accomplishing nothing. We need a concerted effort by all 13 municipalities to tackle this very, very serious problem. So I really think that a lot of these things in this ask, and this first ask came in long before the CRD came and gave us this great details, and unfortunately there's more details there, and it only was last night, and I have not had a chance to digest it. But there's a lot of good things that are duplicating what we were sort of looking to do here. And I just wonder if we're not just a little bit premature in kicking off some of these things. Now, some I don't agree with at all, like a street banner made out of plastic hanging across the road doesn't make any sense for climate action. Convincing the public that there's a problem, I think that's kind of gone now. I think the public knows there's a problem. I understand there's a lot of work that can be done. I don't know why we didn't go into a tree planting thing, but I guess that was my own little thing that I wanted done. All of these, I just can't see us duplicating what we've just paid for at the CRD. And that's going to be a bump on the taxes. It'll still be the same taxpayer. It'll show up on the CRD side as opposed to District T'Sou-ke. I would really like the Climate Action Committee, and I don't want to stall this thing anymore too much, but I'd like them to have a good look at that and maybe have a better understanding of what the CRD is doing, because I'm afraid that I don't at this level, other than it made it very, very clear last night, is we need to act in unison with the province and the feds. And I would think that we have this very ugly Capital Region District, which is a big organization, but they also got a 1.7 million budget to do this from 440,000, somewhere, I don't know the exact amounts. The retrofit program, all these things that we have examined, they're examining and they're doing, and we're paying for it. And now we're coming in here and doing it again. And I'm not so sure that's money well spent in a time when the taxpayers getting beat up at the CRD, getting beat up by us. There's increases in the carbon tax coming. I had a propane bill the other day and I paid $16, $18 on a carbon tax. We've got our transportation master plan that is working to work on these climate action things, it's not as though we're not doing anything. We're doing a lot of things. Everything that we're doing with this in mind. So I'm just not sold on all this, not when we have we're paying for it twice. We've got the other CRD involved. So I don't quite know where to go with this, but I can't support all of these things. I would really need them, and I hate to do this at the final hour, to have a look and see, you know, are we duplicating things? Boy, when they spoke last night, I was excited to hear that much movement, and by that expert staff that's already in place. So I have a lot of misgivings about this. So I don't even know how to proceed at this time. I'll look for some other guidance from council, but I'm not happy with the situation the way it stands. And it's not though the Climate Action Committee has not done great work. They have done some super work, but it's also been done by the CRD in unison with the CRD. So somewhere along the line, we have to have some sort of understanding as, you know, if we pay for somebody here to look after it and we've already paying for somebody over here to do the same thing, it just doesn't make sense. We have to find out what is working and what can work and what won't work. And these things that I see labeled here, I see it covered in what the CRD said to us the other night, and we agreed to do it.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Beddoes. I think we'll see if there's a response from staff first, and then part of it then would get into motions, really, at that point. So I'll just see about a staff response first.
Thank you, Your Worship. To me, it was very clear last night that the CRD is saying that they're there to augment local efforts. So I really believe that we do need local resources in order to move our agenda ahead. The degree of those resources and if there's any overlap, we do need to do some investigating on that. Some of the data collection, for sure, I think we can rely on the CRD to provide for us. The storytelling or the mobilization piece, they're committed to that, but I think we may have a slightly different story to tell. And I think that part of the success that we're going to see is our neighbors telling us their story and why they've changed their modes of transportation or the way that they tackle this problem. The other thing is the CRD requires 2/3 of the members that are part of that service to agree. We won't know that until December 17th, whether that actually they get consent from the 2/3 or not. So I agree, Councillor Beddoes, that there may be some overlap, but I do suggest to Council that we do need to have local resources in order to move that agenda forward.
Okay, thank you, Mr. McInnes. Okay, so any other questions at this stage? So one I have is just on process. So in the staff report, Council is sort of, or pardon me, staff have broken this down. Okay, so there's group 1, and then that lists a number of items, and then, group 2, where did that go? Group 1, then group 2, okay. So that's where the group 1 total of everything was something, and then group 2 brings it to the 6.09. And then that's basically covering off everything. So the one question I have is, should council proceed with that? I, meanwhile, have been doing other advocacy on grants that we were not successful on that I feel we should have been. Now, that's my opinion as the mayor. I think we should get every grant we apply for, but I still think they were solid applications because there's a housing crisis, seniors housing is need, like we've proven this through all the work we've done, our Bike BC grant successes leading up to the little small river crossing and the like. Should we somehow be successful in receiving those funds, will staff have the capacity to deliver on them? Because I'm like banging on our MLA's door, asking for those funds. He's obviously preoccupied with other concerns throughout the province, but in the event that we are successful, we need to deliver on those.
A couple of issues. There are some staffing asks in this budget. that will provide some additional capacity. We are over capacity right now. We talk every day, Mr. Carter and I, on the balance between day-to-day processing of applications and the desire of us both to put significant work into capital projects. So the positions that are in the 2022 budget will bring us some additional capacity, but it's almost just to bring us up to a level where we are not feeling as though we're rushing everything and waiting to make a mistake. So, you know, on the project side, most of that is, you would think it's, you know, you put out an RFP and you put a contract out and you get something built. But the project management, the contract administration piece, it takes a ton of time. So to finish, go ahead, keep advocating. We will do our best, but just know that there's not a whole lot of capacity left.
Okay. Ms. Gray?
Just to further add on to what Mr. McInnes is saying, as you'll note in 2023, the Demand Mule Creek is included in the budget for that year as basically the only major parks project for that year. It's currently sourced with other grants potentially, but hopefully your advocacy will pay off. So it is definitely still in the budget, it's just not for the 2022 priority just because of the funding required for that project.
No, and I recognize that, which is why I'm advocating that the province revisit the grant application there. And also because I know we have other demands coming our way. And so anything to alleviate the tax consequence and to have a successful grant outcome is important. So we're welcoming all of T'Sou-ke to Sun River, especially when that sport box, we're pushing for the school district to relocate a new school there. And that particular community is cut off if there's significant flooding, like there needs to be a way out safely. So there's a number of pieces, which is why we've been working on that entire project, getting kids to school, everything. Now, you don't need to hear me go on about it, but hence why I'm advocating for it. Okay, so.
Excuse me.
You can just say point of order.
Point of order. Am I allowed a comment at this point?
What is your point? What is your
Beddoes,
point of order?
Commented at length.
What is your point of order?
My
You would like to
point of order
speak?
is that I'd like to speak.
Okay,
yes.
that's fine. I was going to make a comment and then look this way for speakers. I wasn't finished rallying it up. Go ahead.
Okay, so, you know, Councillor Beddoes, you've established a narrative here, which I need to address. The CAO did note there's some overlap in what the CRD Climate Action Team is offering regionally with what we're trying to do with our Maiden T'Sou-ke 7% solution strategy, which this council approved back in July. This Climate Action Committee has been working extremely hard this last year to develop two strands of action, the 7% solution and the complementary citizen engagement campaign. We have worked with staff. There have been three iterations of this budget has come forward. I want to be very clear that you use the word duplication repeatedly. In fact, there's no real duplication here. The CRD Climate Action Team, which consists currently of 2.5 full-time employees, with an initial 1.5 full-time employee pending success of this requisition amendment, focus on regional initiatives. These are GHG emissions inventories, sea level rise reports, waste management and Heartland landfill strategies, EV infrastructure for the region, and corporate energy reductions, which in T'Sou-ke includes Sea Park. There is regional coordination offered by the CRD through the intermunicipal working groups, one of which is for elected representatives. Councillor St. Pierre is on that one, and there is one for staff, which our new climate action intern, and I assume Laura, Ms. Hooper or others are on those calls. And as Mr. Harris stated very clearly last night, in answer to my question, he stated the CRD is positioned to be a regional collaborator that will support and work with municipal staff on local implementation of these regional programs. What we've seen in the, we have created this made-in-soup strategy. It needs to be funded. We have a $31 million budget here. We're seeking $109,000 out of $31 million, I'll say. This district has 51 employees, 13 RCMP officers, at least something in the order of 25 paid-on-call firefighter volunteers, and we would like to see a climate action coordinator added to the mix here. We have 9 months' worth of work from this Maya, the staff member, who is much more than a staff member. She's a young, bright individual who has a big career ahead of her, and she must live in a future which our Anna Russell very eloquently spoke of. And we have 2 atmospheric rivers incoming in the days ahead. Councillor St. Pierre is right. This 6% tax increase is necessary to improve our drainage and water systems. I guess the key point here is that we need funding. Christina Moog, our communications coordinator, working with Trapeze, a Victoria company, needs funding to implement a climate action citizen engagement campaign to begin in April. We also need the $20,000 here to ensure that we have the funding to pay for our climate action intern. And we have some other, we definitely need that story coaching consultant funding through Denise Withers to continue that work. And finally, there is, at the $29,000 level, community climate action lead position. And that position is necessary because in August, the climate action intern's work ends, and we are going to, things will not come to a dead halt. Of course not, because this is a whole of organization climate action situation. The new planning and community economic development, which by its very definition includes climate action, so you can't take it out. It's always going to be part of that portfolio. But we need to continue doing this work. And definitely there is not a duplication here. That CRD office is, for example, their concierge service, their navigator, so that I come into, I want to sign up for a heat pump program and get the incentives happening. They can supply, I think it works out on a prorated basis, about 54 conversions. They can help 54 of us move on to non-fossil fuel heating systems. And 54, and in our 7% solution, which we as a council approved, we're seeking 250 this year. So our climate action coordinator, if you look at her work plan, it does include that kind of concierge navigator requirements. Anyway, I think we should just go ahead with 109,000 if it's going to be part of a 6.09% increase.
And I believe staff have included all of that in the 6.09%. Right, okay, so it's all in there. Councillor McMath and Beddoes, please. I know, but we have a speaking order, okay? Go, please, Councillor McMath.
Just to diffuse a little tension too, we are not supposed to agree on everything. And so I love that you are passionate. It's one of the things that I appreciate the most about you. It's just different people at this table have different perspectives and different priorities. So please don't ever take it personally. It's truly not that. And I hate to admit this, I always do, but sometimes I do agree with Councillor Beddoes. And the one piece I would say where I'm not completely sold is the incentives and rebates and the telework center pilot shift. Those 2 pieces are the only 2 pieces where I'm not completely sold on it. I do agree T'Sou-ke needs its own action plan, and it has its own climate challenges that this CRD won't be able to assist us with. They are doing the advocacy, bigger pieces of advocacy work, which I appreciate, but much like, for example, Greater Victoria Tourism, T'Sou-ke has paid into that and has seen a very small return. They do support, but they don't get the same amount of attention that, say, the District of Saanich or the City of Victoria gets as well. So the same thing will happen here. So it's worthwhile. That's why we agree to it. We don't know if it's going to succeed yet, but we do still need our own program. The only two pieces, like I said, it's the $4,000 piece for incentives and the $4,000 for the telework center pilot. In the spirit of efficiency for tonight's meeting, what is the process going forward for this group tonight? If we're pulling out pieces, are we going line by line, or are we just moving one piece full stop?
Well, there's an option here. So one of them is we move the whole thing. That could be an option, and that could be a vote, right? It passes, it doesn't. The other is then that councillors make a motion and test that, rather than seeing the whole budget fail because of one thing. It would be better to then see, you could test an individual motion, I would think, to say, okay, and then see if there's a seconder, and then what that debate on that particular item would look like. So I'll go to Councillor Beddoes. You wanted to reply back. We are getting very loose here because but that's fine. I allowed one to comment. It's fairness, so I'll allow a reply, but hopefully we can just not keep going back and forth after that. Thank you.
So.
Go ahead.
First of
Could you
all,
put me in the queue?
I do, sorry?
Tony just asked to speak next.
Oh,
Okay.
I didn't hear
I'll
that.
go to Councillor St. Pierre after. Go
Okay,
ahead, Beddoes.
I do appreciate Councillor Bateman's enthusiasm and his positive feeling when it comes to this Climate Action Committee, and so he should, and I appreciate that he does that. I just want to correct a few things. One is, I'm not saying throw out everything. I'm just saying that at this point in time, and I hear from the CEO that there is some duplication. I hear from you that the concierge position is very similar to the one that we were looking at. So I do see some duplication. I'm not saying throw it all out, and I understand about the emergency. I just do not have a good, clear understanding of what the CRD has proposed to do for us. And I was hoping that there was some way that we could put a hold on this part of it, let your committee liaison with them and see where there is duplication and possibly save some money. We may not have the luxury of that time, but I really kind of resent the way you come at that I'm so anti about this. My job is to look after the taxpayers' money as yours is too, and you think it's money well spent, and I can appreciate that. You're entitled to your opinion, and I respect your opinion. But I also have an opinion on that I do feel there's some duplication here, and there's some room for some savings, and that's my job. So I don't particularly like the lecture on it, but I'll stop there. The only thing I ask is that the CEO, if it goes through at this 103,000, whatever it is, that if there is savings there, that they're saved. And that's up to staff to do that. Just because it's in the budget, you don't necessarily have to spend that. I'm willing to take a chance and put the funding in place, so if it's needed, it's needed. But there's some problems here, and this needed to be, and it's unfortunately, it's a timing thing. You know, and if this had come in, you know, the CRD came in last month and this came in, we would have a better opportunity to see exactly what's what. And I think we are duplicating, and I think there is some savings to be made here. But in a space of saving $10,000 or $20,000 or whatever it's going to be, I'd be willing to move it on to make sure the resources are there when and if we need them. But I would just like a little bit of courtesy that just because I seem like I oppose something which I don't oppose it, that I'm entitled to my opinion, and I'm entitled to do what I need to do for our taxpayers as well.
Okay, thank you. Over to Councillor St. Pierre, please.
Thank you. And I appreciate Councillor Beddoes, Councillor Maths, and Councillor Bateman's positions in all of this. I would like to suggest that although it's been said many times now, so I feel like I don't necessarily need to belabor the point. We do need local resources. Councillor Beddoes knows we need resources. Everyone knows we need a T'Sou-ke solution, and we need to move forward with that. I think that it's really important that we be able to meet the CRD with boots on the ground. So I do agree with maintaining the budget, and I appreciate this council's willingness to move forward. I do think it's also extremely difficult to actually look at this and figure out what to do, because The problem is so huge, the solutions seem so nebulous because we've never had to deal with it before, but having the resources in place will only help us to deal with that. Having the minds in place to try and figure things out, to look at the solutions that are happening in other districts, to try and put them in place here, to promote our solutions in other districts, it's all useful, it's all part of the solution. I think in this case, it's less about duplication and more about necessary redundancy and just fail-safes. So I would love to move forward with this. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor St. Pierre. So I'm going to see if there is a member of council that would like to put a motion forward. Go ahead, Councillor Bateman, you're the first one with your hand up.
Well, I'd like to. Well, I'll give it a go, and I'll move that we, what's the language here? We,
Right on the screen.
sorry, I've had a flush here.
Just hold on, our corporate officer has her hand up.
Sorry, I just wanted to make sure that the first motion is to give first reading to the financial plan bylaw, and then if there's to be any amendments, it would be after that. The bylaw needs to have first reading to actually have some discussion.
Thank you for that clarity. So now with this, then, this is group A and B together,
Correct.
right? So what is on here for 835 is A and B. Just want to make sure that we're talking about 6.9%.
Correct.
Okay, so I will start with that. That council give first reading to 2022-2026 Financial Plan Bylaw Number 835, 2021. Is there a mover? Moved by Councillor McMath, seconder. Councillor Lajeunesse. Okay, now this is the interesting part. So I did recognize Councillor Bateman, but we have a different mover and seconder. So you're okay?
Absolutely.
Okay, I'm going to go to the mover and seconder first, and then we'll come to you. Go ahead, Councillor McMath.
Just moving for discussion at this point.
Okay, Councillor Lajeunesse, any comment?
I did have many comments to make, but I think my colleagues have pretty well covered everything I had to say, so I'm just going to leave it at that for now.
Okay, Councillor Bateman, that was easy. Back to you.
Yes?
So it's
I don't know
moved and
what I'm doing
seconded. So now what you could do is consider, you can speak to this, you know, the whole budget that is there. And then also, if you wanted to make an amendment, this would be the time. Sorry.
No, sorry.
Wait, hold
We
on.
need to call the question on first reading so that that is done.
Got it.
And then we can consider an amendment and then give second reading as amended if that's council's desire.
It's like not my first council meeting, but thank you. I'm tired from yesterday. Okay, so I will make some comments then on this budget. I was wrestling with it a lot. I really suffered when we were looking at 17%. I just couldn't even sleep on that. But I also know that that was not the budget that staff wanted to bring to us. It was, what is your big wish list? Let's cost it out. So I get that exercise, and I feel that there's been a lot of thoughtful consideration put into this. When you read through the staff report and hear what staff have to say, I was making a comment in the break that it feels like the building block game of Jenga that I enjoy at home, where there's different blocks. And then the challenge is if you start to pull some pieces out, it gets weaker. And then at some point, if you pull too much out, the whole thing falls over and you need to start over again. And so while at first I thought, well, if we took this out, that should be fine. But then there is a big consequence to that. I feel that the work that's happening or potentially happening for Connie and Manzer needs to happen this year. There's obviously cost savings by working with the ministry. It's an area of our community that doesn't get a lot of attention, although it is greatly impacted by everything we do because of the road network. So it is good timing to complete all that necessary work. We have so many demands here in the core that how do you then reprioritize back out to that area? So now is the time just to finish that work. We know along West Coast Road that it's a challenge for everyone to navigate. We need to get on with that work, and while the ministry is willing and ready to work with us, it's an opportunity that we need to take. And then I thought I was going back and forth on the Church Road Roundabout, and this is such an important connection in our community. I worry, given recent events, that I wonder, I mean, people are still upset that we're, poor timing with the road network, and I get it, it is poor timing, but this is fully funded projects. So you need to take the opportunities as you get them, and I worry that fully funded projects are not going to be easy to come by, given just the devastation throughout the province. How can we argue for 100% fully funded projects when they don't have a road network at all? Like, I get it. And then just also, what are the grant opportunities going to look like in the future? Like, it's concerning when you think of the billions of dollars that are going to be needed to reestablish the province. So we need to get on with this work here. The traffic is not going away. It gradually, as we just need to get the routes done. So I am in support of getting that chunk done. And also the consequence of not doing it is then how do you reapply for a grant again and say, oh, by the way, we need the money now, we're ready. It doesn't work that way. T'Sou-ke has learned the hard way of returning grants and then waiting. And then everything happens and here we are. So it's a good opportunity while there's good momentum to finish off this necessary work. It needs to happen. And then we know about why the advocacy piece is important, because in Mr. Carter's last presentation, where there was a number of other pieces, they were all really well thought out, like the stormwater needs to be fixed. We can see it. Yes, it is. Like, you can't argue with it. The water's everywhere. So we know that we need to continue on with the advocacy so that we hopefully do get these opportunities to address other parts in our community that we need to deal with them. So that's all those pieces. In terms of announcements, I was at a Rising Economy Forum earlier this week. Minister Osborne was there to give some opening remarks, Minister of Municipal Affairs. She did say to us to look forward to further announcements for local governments from both her office and Minister Heyman. It was positive. I'm hoping this is in a reaction to the CARB fund disappearing, and I'm sorry, I don't remember the acronym. It wasn't a lot of money for us. It was something. It was around $2,500. A lot of pushback from local governments in losing that. So I'm hoping that the budget, when it comes announced, will give us some work there. In terms of timing, there was a time when T'Sou-ke did wait, and we were meeting just on the eve of May 15th to adopt a budget. And so part of that was, then you hear what the CRD is doing, you get the provincial throne speech, you get the federal throne speech, and then we do our work. The downside to that is then we have half a year to do the work. And a lot of our road work is contingent on fish windows and impact to environment and so forth. So then the work doesn't happen, and then we do try again next year. So this is why the budget cycle has changed, to give the benefit of the whole year, which we desperately need to get on top of things. In terms of climate action, the piece that is missing in all of this here is the work that staff have been doing for the past decade. So back in 2010, I was a fairly new councillor then, I put forward a notice of motion then. I was at a forum, I think it was at UVic, and there was a lot of information about climate action and how that's going to impact us into the future. And my takeaway and what I remember there is to expect hotter and drier summers and wetter, rainy winters. And there was a lot more other information, but those were my two takeaways. And that's where I met Ms. Hooper for the first time. And I was sitting there going, well, who do we tell? Like, what do we do with this? And the answer is we got to tell everybody. So we put a notice of motion forward, and we formed the district's green team. There was some support from council at the time, and it was meant for a lot of the work to start happening on the ground at a staff level, which it always has been. So we're not just starting this now. It has been happening for many, many years. The challenge is we only just got a communications officer the last year. We've done a lot of work. It's always the case where, okay, we have to do this, and then someone said to me, don't you ever pause for applause? Like, ever? And I'm like, there's just too much to do. Like, just forget, just let's keep going. And then even I sometimes, people, what have you done since you've been elected? I'm like, gee, I don't really remember. I must have done something, haven't I? I gotta look. Because others will look at the photos. Oh, there's the mayor in the chain of office, and the cutting, ribbon cutting. It's like, we just need to get stuff done, like, heck with the ribbon and the shovel, whatever, let's just get on with all this stuff. So there's a lot of work that's been happening on the ground for a long time. We used to have a rainwater measuring system on the roof of this building, once upon a time, to calculate T'Sou-ke specific data. Another council didn't feel that that was necessary, and they got rid of the green team and took all the stuff away because we didn't need any of it, we can get data elsewhere. Well, nobody's tracking that. It would have been great to have it now, but I can't wish for anything to be better or different. It just is what it is. So here we are, but I think what I'd like to see happen here, and I'm comfortable with the amount, I'm not fully comfortable with the allocation for the climate action, and here's why. Part of it is, in order, from my opinion, to really make the shift, we need the people. We need the people of T'Sou-ke to gather together and to share and learn. So I love the storytelling pieces. I love the showcasing pieces. I'm okay with the climate coordinator because we need to get the people involved, get the kids involved. I mean, they're learning about this in school, and it's a challenge because of COVID, and we're just so stuck in our Zoom boxes or our physical distance. I don't even recognize people all the time anymore, is to find a way, like even taking, for me, it's the case of the Rotary used to have bikes that you could auction off. Like, I would love to give 50 kids a bicycle rather than one person an e-bike. Because you can pedal around T'Sou-ke if you know where our trail system is. It's just, we're trying to tell that story of where it is and how to do it. So why not give a bunch of kids bicycles instead of just one person who can afford an e-bike and has safe storage for it? And then it's the case of telling our story together. And I think it's just, there's so much happening in the district right now. We just sometimes need, can we just breathe, pause, talk a little bit? Can we like share a bit of a potluck, bring your own lunch, and let's just share and talk about the work that we're doing and why it's so important, and then get some people involved. I agree that we need someone to tell our story locally, because if it refers to Saanich is doing this, then it comes up with, well, that's Saanich, they're this, they're that doesn't work out here. Or, you know, you see examples from North Vancouver. It's not relatable because it's not T'Sou-ke. We need our own solution. And I believe that's where our community's success, the character, the resilience comes from the people that are here on the ground. And so while I'm comfortable with the amount, getting back to that, I'm okay to put it in there. I'm just not comfortable with the rebates at this time. And I'm not comfortable with hiring and starting a new position at this time. What I would rather do is that funding is there. As the committees get underway and they start doing this work, I'm glad that the new staff member is over at the Parks and Environmental Services building, because we made changes in that department to have more environmental work happening there. So that's where there's a lot of sharing of what's been happening already. For example, I was in the pesticide group today. We don't use pesticides on any of our properties. We're one of the only ones in BC that do that best practice. The others are trying not to. They're not there yet. We're a leader there. Our golf course doesn't use any harmful chemicals either. Imagine that on a golf course. There's other techniques they've been doing to have a sustainable course, and it's one of the best out there. It's not run by us, but the staff there work closely together from the CRD with our staff to get best practices. The work that we're doing, the landscaping, there's no irrigation in most of that new system there, but the planting and all that looks awesome because of the types of plant that have been selected specifically for those areas. So that's where there's a lot of thought process. T'Sou-ke did toxic Roundup in the past, and also did other things to mobilize and gather the people and to get them involved. So it's almost like I'd like to see that funds shifted to get the humans of our community active and involved. We did a lot of school outreach, working back and forth. We're gradually finding a way back into the schools. I've been invited back. And then we also have to have an OCP get done. So I think that's where, when we put in at a previous meeting, that when the committees gather together in June and give final recommendations, that'll give us more of a sense. Okay, well, what's working here? And then this council could greenlight that position or make a recommendation to the next council who could support it in their budget. But the funding is there. It will allow us to do that when we get more intel, to just show what's happening and how all the pieces work. So I fully support the budget. We have somebody in place there. I just think some of those pieces need to shift because it's not recognizing the work, the good work that the district has been doing for over a decade. And where you find it all is in our community in blooms. Like some people say, why do you participate in that flower program? It's not about just beautiful design and flowers. So much of it is in environmental sustainability. And we participated in that. It's like, wow, you learn and see all of these things that we have been doing that have largely, only those that participate in it really hear and know about it. But we're a 5-bloom leader on that because of the work we've done through development and other design at the district level. But we haven't told that story yet. So we need time for that storytelling to emerge and to be shared, and it still gives us the opportunity to say, okay, well, there's good momentum here. The Climate Action Committee, they know what they were talking about. Let's revisit that, and we can make that change because it would be allocated in the budget. So I'll leave it at that, and I'll go to other councillors who would like to speak next. Councillor St. Pierre.
Thank you. I think the one thing that comes to mind for me right now is that I was told at one point as a councillor that if you basically pissed everyone off, you were probably doing your job. And I think that that's what we're about to do, but I think it's needed. I think that people that really want to see climate action moving forward are going to be extremely disappointed at no climate coordinator, at not getting everything that they wanted. I think that the people who would prefer to keep the taxes much, much lower are going to be very disappointed because it looks like it's going to be much harder than we had hoped or anticipated, honestly, before seeing the 17. But at this point, I'm thrilled that we can get it down this far and actually still put the money into the infrastructure so that we don't actually have a worse problem in the future that would actually affect our taxpayers even more. I think that we absolutely have to be looking at fiscal responsibility in that way, especially in terms of adaptation. I honestly don't think we have a choice. And who knows how that's going to impact the future in so many ways, but I think that it's now that it needs to happen. And we have staff that's done extraordinary work in terms of figuring out how to make it all happen. They've got a beautiful Jenga, and they pulled out as many pieces as they could. I don't want to mess with it too much, although I do agree, as I pointed out in the past, that I don't know that I don't really like the rebate myself. I think it really helps the people who already have the resources to put in heat pumps at this point in time. So I agree with the mayor and with, I think, Councillor Math on that, for sure. Thank you.
Other comments?
Yeah, I'll just note that the rebate is not in the, there is a $4,000 incentive rebate for modal shift, but the heat pump rebates were removed in an earlier iteration.
Yeah, I was referring to the modal shift
Modal
on
shift, okay.
on e-bikes.
Yeah, yeah. So in terms of the budget as a whole, as I said earlier, my head's swimming a little bit, and I got emotional. So, Councillor Beddoes, I'm not sure apologies is the right word, but it is the right word. Okay, apology. And at the same time, and maybe an apology to Mr. Carter too. However, I still find it's a lot to take in for one night. Yeah, and here we're going through first, second, third. It's challenging, but I agree with Councillor St. Pierre that this is I came in tonight thinking we would maybe come in at 4% with that just under 4% option, but I'm convinced, and Councillor St. Pierre is correct, there will be there's already, social media pushback on looking at the 5-year projection. And so great that we have the communications coordinator and her ability to get the message out about all the upsides of this particular bold and brave and clever and strategic approach. That's it.
Councillor McMath?
I just want us to get away from that this is a really large, daunting tax increase because the percentage is so deceptive, and when you throw it in a headline in a newspaper, obviously it's like, without context, it's negatively, emotionally it grabs people, and that's why newspapers do that, and that's why media outlets do that. But the reality is like when you break it down to the cost increase per month, and then you look at the strategic planning that's happening, like what I would love, and I'm so glad that we have that position now, is that I just want something like infographic, easy to digest. It could be a whole page in the paper, online, all over the place, where it's like, we are, by increasing it X dollars a month, I can't remember it off the top of my head right now, we're actually saving this community millions of dollars. I just really want that message to get out. So I want us to get away from saying that it's this big, brave thing and we're going to take the heat from the community. The community wouldn't have the heat if they had the education, and that's our responsibility. So I just kind of want us to take talking about storytelling and narratives, like I just want us to take that back here. In regards to the rebates and even the modal shift there, I would even be happy to have that set aside for the position of that lead. I do want the lead position to stay in there because, like the CAO referenced, there is multiple benefits to have that, because we can have all the planning, but if there's nobody there to do it, they clearly don't have the capacity, so that person needs to be there. That person being in that position is also going to free up for that ECDEV position as well, which all ties back into the environment as well, because we're trying to target commercial industrial space, businesses, which keeps commuter traffic in. It's one big beautiful circle here. So I'm just happy for us to continue as is. If we're looking for specifics, I would just change the assignment of incentives and rebates and put that perhaps in a different category of either an addition into their campaign, miscellaneous, or we can pull out that $8,000. But I'm ready to go as is.
Thank you. I'm going to I have a thought, so I don't want to forget it, but I want to go to Councillor Beddoes, and I'm just going to make a note there. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, first of all, I would like to, I'm still blown away by Mr. Carter's presentation. I thought that was very articulate and stated it very well. Now the important thing is staff, that we have a communications person to preempt some of the news cycle and get something into the local newspaper that articulates that part of the presentation that, yeah, I would love the 4% or 3.9%, but Mr. Carter's argument makes sense, and that's what we have to get over to the public. So over to staff and make sure that that message gets out in that way as best you can. I understand you're not going to make anybody happy. And on the climate action stuff, I have a great deal of faith in our staff that they, even with this modest budget, and remember it's down from 207,000 to 109, that they will spend that money wisely by checking into, you know, what is duplication, what isn't duplication, what can be done reasonably and sensibly and to have the best effect. So I'm okay with that. I think we have a very competent staff to do that, and so I'm ready to vote on the budget. Thank you.
Councillor Lajeunesse?
Yeah, I guess on the climate change ask, I think that the most important thing that we can do as far as climate action mitigation is to educate people on the benefits of acting now and how it needs to be more of a grassroots movement, because as they say, you can't push a rope uphill, and I don't think we can legislate people to change their actions. They need to know why they're doing things, and that I hope that the intern that we have will liaise with their cohorts at the CRD to make sure that we're not duplicating services and that we are working in a complementary fashion. But I feel strongly that everything that we've been doing, certainly in my time and talking to staff over the years, everything we do through a green lens, so to speak. And I think the work that's being done is excellent. I think that transportation, infrastructure, the capital projects that are coming up, it's unfortunate that we haven't kept up over the years with our transportation infrastructure, wastewater, stormwater, all of those things. And so the fact that we're actually looking after it now is excellent. And the Connie Road project, all of the things working in unison is just, Mr. Carter's found efficiencies that are just blowing us away. And I think as part of our messaging, maybe we could have Mr. Carter put together a little video of his presentation posted on our Twitter feed and whatnot. But anyway, I'm happy with this as it is.
Okay, anything else from anyone? I did, before Councillor Logan signed off, she did indicate that she is in support of the 6.09. She didn't want to interrupt when she was leaving, but I think she heard and completely appreciated and where you were coming from. So she did indicate her support, even though that doesn't count as a vote. So I just wanted to say that she was here and she captured that and she was on board with it. Okay, so seeing that there's no other hands up, in terms of the little details though, you know, to now sit there and argue over $4,000 when we're looking at millions of dollars, it just seems like, really, that's what we're doing? In the grand scheme of things, but it's just, I'm going to do it anyway. Just part of it is, this is where it's mobilizing as many people as possible. So even if we added to that, you know, saplings to hand out or community event party when the province hit COVID restart, trees to hand out, something like that to this. It's about, this problem is a human-caused problem. The planet could easily shake us off any day and continue on as it orbiting as it chooses to. This is our problem to solve, which requires then the people to be involved. So it's kind of like, can we add a gather the people event or community event or something? And I know there's the other pieces, but sometimes when you hand out stuff, like when the Scouts hand out apples, it's a really good fundraiser because it's the apples and you got to get one, whether you want one or not, or cookies. Like they draw you in and you learn about what the groups are doing, or you know, the firefighters have a helmet and, you know, like it's like, oh, tell us more about what you're doing, like something more of a draw. Here's a tree, take it home and plant it. And if you don't have space on your property, here's a park, here's a shovel, go plant it here now. Something like that. Can we just add that line? Or does we want the committee to give feedback? Because right now, just, this is where I struggle is some people just need a $50 bicycle right now. And I would rather hand out a bunch of refurbished used bicycles than an e-bike. Something like that. So what is our answer there?
You could potentially shift that money into the kickoff campaign with a, because Councillor Beddoes last night spoke of, what was the trade-offs? Tell us about that.
Can I speak, Your Worship? Yeah. Well, it's a National Post article said that if you use your dishwasher once a day, you need to plant, I think it's 1.8 trees a year. And if you have a shower once a day, and I do, by the way, then you should plant 8 something trees. So for me and my personal thing, because we do probably use the dishwasher once a day, but only 2 of us, I don't know how we do it, and the shower, I need to plant 10 trees. And I thought, and I've advocated this for a couple of years to the Climate Action Committee, I know they had other things in their mind, but I'd love to go out and buy 1,000 trees, give them to the kids at school, whatever, 1, 2, or 3, get the service clubs to go to this big park over here. I could find 1,000 places to plant a tree. You have to put the little cones around them. That would resonate through the community in 1,000 different ways. Those kids going home, and I remember, and I related this at another meeting when I was in grade 2, which was a long, long time ago. They did that. They brought us trees, and they came in a little box. And I can't tell you how excited I was to get that tree and go plant it. And that tree now is this big around. If it's still there, I hope it's still there. And I had another thing put by a senior member the other day about a young tree will capture more as it's growing carbon out of the atmosphere than a fully grown tree, because a fully grown tree is grown and it's maintaining itself. But a young tree grows and it sucks out all that carbon. I just asked for something simple. This is before you took over the Climate Action Committee, and I don't know why it hasn't caught on. I think it's a wonderful program, and you talk about bringing it front and center. I think with this storm that we had, if you put a program like that in with the budget you got, I think it'll go a long, long way to bringing us together in the community and get people thinking about where we're going. So anyways, that's my two, I went a bit too long, sorry.
No, that's fine. Mr. McInnes?
Just a couple of comments, Your Worship, if I could. First of all, just from this side of the table, thank you for the trust you have in us. It's inspiring, but this is a budget, and you know, the programs that are in the budget, it's an iterative process. To your point, though, watch for Earth Day 2022. This is going to be the kickoff of this campaign, and it's going to be an Earth Day for us in T'Sou-ke to remember.
It does, in a way. It'll be one to remember.
But there is a bunch of work being done right now, and that's the target. So I understand, you know, the picture's not there yet. It's being built right now. But there is an end date, and sort of that kickoff date will be the culmination of a bunch of work, and possibly the handoff of this Climate Action Committee, the work that they're doing to, you know, the next piece of what that work looks like. But Earth Day 2022, it'll be a big celebration like that, and it'll be the kickoff of our local campaign, and I'm really looking forward to it.
Excellent. Well, good. I do too. So in terms of, like, what do we do about this? Not to nitpick around $4,000, but...
That was my comment about thanking you for having the trust in us. We're here. We're listening.
Okay.
You know, as I say, the climate action budget won't be itemized in the budget. There'll be a sum there for us to have access to.
Okay.
And it will change. It'll change. It'll be an iterative process. You know, I think we've all heard loud and clear. Incentives are probably something that we should think long and hard on. But this piece around the celebration and bringing people together and sharing stories and receiving something that reminds us of the work that's being done and the importance of it, that's being heard loud and clear.
Okay. And just to share, just further to what Councillor Beto said, you know, many years ago when I got elected, I heard that we were sort of the bear murder capital of BC. We were setting a record every year for the amount of bears that were tranquilized because of human contact. And it was very distressing. And so here again, our staff took note of it, and we took it to the schools, and the schools got involved. And then the children brought that message home about how to start handling and using and being more mindful of that. And we have now, you know, we're doing extremely well. Like even when we talked about becoming bear smart, with everything we're doing through the community and BYLAWS, it doesn't really need to be kind of been there, done that. It's like dated for us now because of where we're at. So it just shows the success of involving children and how they problem solve and how they bring these messages home. So that's where involving the kids will help bring that message into the home, because they'll have something to show their parents. Because usually when you ask them what they learned, I don't know, I forget, I don't remember. So it's like, okay, nothing happens at school. Well, that's at least my child who is kind of ditching class already in grade 1. But when he actually comes home with something, we have something to talk about. So maybe that can just be some feedback going back to the committee on how that can be different.
For sure, and I hope I'm not putting too much pressure on Dr. Lang.
Okay, so we are here now. So I am going to call the question then. It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor? Councillor St. Pierre's hand is up. Okay, that's unanimous on first reading. So now, the next part is that council gives second reading to 2022-26 Financial Plan Bylaw Number 835, 2021. Moved by Councillor Bateman, seconded by Councillor Lajeunesse. Any comments, Councillor Bateman, Lajeunesse? Anyone? Anything? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor then? And that's unanimous, thank you. And now the third part is that council give third reading to the 2022-2026 Financial Plan Bylaw Number 835, 2021. Moved by Councillor Lajeunesse and seconded by Councillor McMath. Any comments on third? No. Third? No. Anyone online? No. Okay, I'll call the question. All in favor? Any opposed? And that's unanimous. Okay, thank you, everyone. Thank you, staff. It's not our first meeting, though. We've had a few. They're all kind of blurring together right now in my head, but it's like we were here yesterday or something. I'm not entirely sure. But I would, yes, you're right, two were canceled. So what I would encourage councils to do, members to do, if you do feel that, okay, just really need to unbundle a bit more about what Mr. Carter just said, is maybe reach out and schedule a bit of time.
I do just want to reiterate what Ms. Gray said. So there's two things coming up. December 1st, we'll have our in-person budget meeting here in council chambers. But we are going to be doing slide decks, and the slide decks will have pretty pictures, but it'll have voiceovers behind those as well. And if you think Mr. Carter's presentation was good tonight, wait till you see it with him with time to practice and do it a couple of times. So, you know, and last year was the first year we did the virtual budget meetings. I'm told that it was the biggest view on our YouTube channel of all time so far. So, you know, not necessarily. No, there wasn't a lot of people there the night or the two sessions that we had, but the amount of people that looked at them over the year, it was significant. I expect the same thing, and just you know, as Councillor Bateman alluded to, it's there for posterity, and it's there for us to look at and refer back to. So that's the idea. As Council has heard, this whole planning and budget cycle really is the foundation of our engagement process going forward. So we continue to find ways to improve it going forward. So this year it'll be the slide decks with voiceovers behind them. And hopefully they'll provide that depth of information that you're alluding to.
Okay, that's great, Mr. McInnes. Councillor McMath?
Through your worship to staff, when will we start seeing the communication pieces around this? And I'd like them to come here first, or if you can email them to us so we can review.
So we need to get to third reading tonight. We're going to have videography going on tomorrow, starting tomorrow at, I know I'm on at 10:30, and I think everybody else has got their presentations afterwards. But tonight was big. We had to get our marching orders in order to go out to the public. So I'm not sure the schedule of when information will be going out, but it's between now and the open house on December 1st is not a long time. So.
What about the pieces like the inserts that go with the notices? And are we taking out any advertising?
The property tax, you're talking about the property tax insert, that won't go out until many moons from now. So there is time for that.
Yeah, it'll be close to next May before those go out.
Because we put it with the tax notice.
No, I get it. I mean, I would like to see it first. I think it can be, and maybe it will be before we see it, I feel like we haven't always crushed it in making it like easily digestible to a community member who doesn't have the time and trust us to make these decisions. So I know it's not till then, but if we can have that ahead of time to review, and I'm sure Christine will crush it, but that's a piece I would really like to see.
Yes, so that will come before the tax rate bylaw is approved, which by legislation has to be done by May 15th. So are you asking that you would
like to see it before it goes out, because I would like to make recommendations or suggestions perhaps.
We can do that, absolutely.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so in terms of timing, so the open house is on December 1st, and then then it will come back to council for like a public hearing, is that correct? Public input session?
That is the public input session.
That is that session, okay.
That's what's required by legislation.
So,
and then-
adoption, though?
We could see it back in front of council for adoption on December 13th.
Okay, so that's when it'll return to us again, is December 13th, okay. And then the tax rate bylaw will follow in the coming months. We'll get data from BC Assessment, and then we sort of, that should come probably, it's January usually, isn't it, when they send that out, into January?
Yes, the first draft comes late December, early January, I believe. And then there's always a revised BC assessment roll that comes in March, I believe it is.
Right.
And then we use that data to finalize the tax rate, and we'll have all the details about the specific tax impact, et cetera. But I anticipate it should be close to the same number we're projecting now.
Perfect, okay, no, that's good. Okay, so on that note, a motion to adjourn tonight's meeting, please. Moved by Councillor McMath, seconded by Councillor Lajeunesse. As always, take good care, everybody. Thank you to those who joined us tonight and those online, and be well, everyone. I know it's a tough time out there. All those in favor of adjournment? And that's unanimous. Thank you, everyone. Take care,
Thanks, everyone.
Tony.